Apologies if I'm not my normal cheery self, but I've had an absolute nightmare of fish keeping in the last 24 hours. Basically, you may be aware that we've in England been hit by a series of quite powerful storms, and up until yesterday I was quite lucky. Even though I live quite rurally, my power stayed on, and I was pretty thankful for that. But yesterday that changed, the power went out, and although this fish room is well insulated, I was a little bit concerned that perhaps things would get a bit cold. You'll notice though that my floor is wet and there's a tank empty, and this is where things start to go massively wrong during my last evening. Not only did the power go out, but also other things started to go a bit nuts around here. So even though the power went out, I was fairly confident that this room would stay warm. It's well insulated, the tanks are quite high volume, so the sort of heat trapped in this area is quite warm, and I figured they would last around 24 hours without my intervention. But I was laying in bed at about 11 o'clock and I thought, actually there's a fish tank in my wooden shed. So this is the aftermath. You can see it's absolutely destroyed. Now, why didn't I remember this beforehand? I don't know. It just kind of didn't pass through my mind. But this shed's actually a lot colder. There's no insulation really. It's just wood with some panelling on. And when I was in bed and I thought, oh Christ, all my fish are going to freeze to death. So I came up here and I thought I'll just capture them, put them in my new shed and then go to bed. If I'd have known what was going to happen, I should have actually just stayed in bed. Upon measuring the temperature in here, the ambient temperature was 7 degrees Celsius. Bearing in mind, there is no light in here because the power's gone off. So I'm doing it all by torchlight. Catching fish out of here by torchlight is obviously incredibly difficult. I missed one. I missed a clownfish. No idea where she was. And there's a yellow citron goby in here somewhere and a wrasse, which hopefully I better find at another point. Obviously, we got light and heating now, so they are safe. And that's really the easy part, because you can see I've managed to catch the fish out. I've got 2 butterflies here, and I was really worried about these guys because with no heating and an ambient temperature of 7 degrees, they're going to get very cold very quickly. I also managed to capture out the majority of the other ones. We've got a Lamarck angel, a little chromis there, I've got my tang, shrimp, and I caught as many hermits and snails as possible. And that was around 12:30, and I thought, brilliant, time to go to bed. And then I heard an almighty clonking noise, one big horrendous crack. And just because it felt like doing it, this sump tank decided to crack at the same time that I was up here. I don't know why. If you can tell me why, that would be brilliant. I'm putting it down to the wrath of God. There was no reason for this to happen. There was no reason for me to be in the room, really. You can see the crack is here, it goes all the way across the base. You tell me. I mean, I could only be happy that I was in the room at the time because it meant I could react to it. But it's the last thing you want to be doing after you've just caught loads of fish by torchlight out of a 5-foot aquarium, to then have to completely strip out a 4x2x2 sump. And in that sump we have mollies. This is my population of saltwater mollies, so I had to completely catch every single one of them. They're thankfully okay, but that's kind of the situation, and it's an absolute nightmare because this system was just getting going. It was just starting to look decent. I was getting happy with it, you know, and now we're back to square one. We've got a broken sump. I need to try and fix this somehow. I'm gonna perhaps try and get some glass or acrylic to create a sheet over that, and then silicone it over, because I've done that kind of fix before on my other tanks and it's worked. So that's my first course of action. I've got this HA6 marine grade silicone, so I've got the silicone thankfully. I always try and keep a tube of this spare because if you own fish tanks it's worthwhile having this. And I need to drain out the rest of this water and try and work out how to fix this sump, because this sump is incredibly important to these other 2 tanks because they all should be running into it and out of it. That's 450 litres of water. Thankfully most of it went out the door when I started siphoning it, and I'm not having a very good morning, to be honest. What I'm going to do now is empty this tank out and see if I can actually repair it. I'll show you the crack a little bit better because now I've cleaned the tank out. You see this crack? What on earth caused that to happen? I mean, that's 10mm glass, right? I wasn't in this tank. I wasn't doing anything to it. I was merely near it, okay? So I didn't drop anything in there. I didn't do anything to affect this tank. Why did it crack at 1 AM, half one in the morning? Why did that happen? Why was I in the room when it happened? What was this? I'm at a loss. But I do have, thankfully, some acrylic. This is, I think it's 5mm acrylic. I used to have this as a lid on my other tanks. I am going to try and fix this tank, because if we look at the lid, it is a perfect fit. And I've fixed tanks before with success. You can see over here, this tank here had a massive, or still does have a massive crack down the side, and I've siliconed glass over the top, and it's been running for 3 years like that, similar to this bottom tank's cracked as well. So I'm familiar with the process. We're going to fix this tank with this acrylic, and we're going to get it running again. So the first step to doing this is everything has to be completely clean. There can't be any dirt in here. We need to get all this old algae off, and we also need to have it completely dry as well. That marine grade silicone is actually really good though, because it does tolerate a little bit of wetness, a little bit of grim, a little bit of algae and stuff, because the black stuff, which is what I bought, is a lot more tarry than the clear stuff. So I'll just show you what I've done. I did the siliconing off screen. It's not going to win any prizes for how nice it looks, but I'm hoping that it's going to do the job. You can see the piece of acrylic that I've used, and I've gone around the edge about an inch and a half thick of silicone. This corner hasn't really adhered as well as I'd hoped, so I've had to do a little bit of a patch job there. You can see that it's still complete around the edge, so should hold the water out. And then that line there is the crack. This central line is the crack, and I've put an extra line down each side, so if one of the outside edges fails, we've still got an inside edge as well, so it's a bit of a barrier. I need to leave it now to cure, and then we'll put some water in and we will see whether or not this has done the job. Okay, it's been over 24 hours since I did the fix on this tank. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill it up now. The silicone has completely hardened, well, at least around the edge. I'm aware that the stuff in the middle may take a little bit longer because it's less oxygen exposure and it's quite a thick amount of silicone. However, around the edge it's all gone really hard. I'm happy here that there isn't any breaks and gaps in the silicone, so even though it has sort of ingressed a little bit in this corner, it's still a decent seal there. So we'll fill it up maybe a couple of inches above this, and then we'll see if there's any water ingress, and we'll go from there. So this will be the tell. If we start seeing water going into any of these air pockets, we'll know that I haven't sealed it properly. But so far it's looking fine, isn't it? We'll just let the rest of it get covered up. Now you might be wondering why I don't just take the bottom panel of glass off, replace that, because that obviously would be the best fix, or why I don't just buy a new tank. Well, the reason being is I don't have the funds to buy a new tank, to be fair, because this tank, when I got it built years ago, cost me £300 for this tank, which I've been quoted now about £500 for the same tank because of glass prices and things going up. So if I can fix it, I'd rather fix it than spend all that money on a new one. And it's a really nice tank. I'm really annoyed that it's broken, to be honest. So it looks like the seals are all holding and there are no leaks so far. So I'll continue to fill it and we'll see where we are. Okay, so we are back up and running within say 36 hours of disaster, we're now back up and running. The system's only half full of water because that's all I had on hand, but I can fill it up easily. You can see there is no water ingress in this fix, so that says to me that it has done the job. There is no reason either why going forward this won't hold for a very long time. Silicone, especially this marine silicone, won't degrade in salt water. It's UV resistant, so we can call this fix done. I'll put my live rock back in here. The water is a little bit cloudy. Obviously there's been quite a lot of die-off in this tank over the last few hours, so we're going to be going for a mini cycle, I'd have thought. Hopefully there's enough biological live stuff in my other tanks to handle that. I have cleaned both of my filters on here, so we've got a 307 and a 207 over there. They were stinking, smelled like rotten eggs, so I'm glad I've cleaned them out to stop all of that ammonia going through the system. So yeah, it's been a very tiring and draining last few days. It's especially difficult when your entire business is basically based on this sort of fish house and making sure that it runs properly. And when you have a big disaster like this, it can make things quite tough in terms mentally, but we got through it, and hopefully now we can push forward and move on into the future. Obviously this does mean that my system is going to be going through another cycle. It's probably cost me about 2 months, I'd have thought, in maturity, but that's just the way it is. Thankfully though, I was in the room when it happened. It could have been a lot worse, I suppose. I got lucky, I guess, because if I hadn't been in the room at the time, then all of my mollies would have died. I'd have lost all the water onto the floor, and I'm thankful as well that the power's come back on, because I could have been doing this whole thing in the dark with all my other systems running out of heat as well. So could have been a lot worse. It does show that my two-system approach to this fish house has worked, because it allowed me to put all of my things into my other system to keep them alive. Had I only had one central system, then I would have been in big trouble as well. So let me know what you think in the comments. Also, if you've liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you to my channel members. Once again, thanks for watching, and happy fish keeping.